Experience the life of a Brazilian mercenary in the Ukraine war. Level 1. The video. You didn't go for any specific cause. You went because of that video. It was a Tuesday morning. In Curitiba. It just popped up in your feed. A Brazilian guy, wearing military gear, speaking Portuguese, with heavy snow in the background. He explained he was fighting in Ukraine, making 4,500 reais a month. Wait, no. That works out to 26,000 reais. Yes, 26,000 reais. He showed off the apartment he rented in Kyiv. He mentioned there was life insurance too. In case the worst happens. They pay out 350,000 to your family. Wait, no. It's 1 million. He claimed the training was basic. You didn't need any military background. As long as you had the guts, you could sign up. The link to the application form was right there in the video description. You were 31 at the time. Already 3 months behind on your rent. And your boss had just fired you from the construction site a week ago. You watched that video over and over, 3 times. Then you watched 5 other videos from Brazilians talking about the same thing. All of them in Ukrainian military uniforms. All of them alive and on camera. And all of them focused on the money. Wednesday, you filled out the application on the International Legion for the Territorial Defense of Ukraine website. Friday, you got a message on your messaging app from a Brazilian recruiter named Rodrigo. He lives in Lviv. He's in charge of coordinating new volunteers. Rodrigo said the process is simple. Just fly to Warsaw first. From there, you take a bus to the Ukrainian border. Then, you sign a 6-month contract with the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Your pay is settled in US dollars. Your rights are exactly the same as those of a Ukrainian soldier. You gave your mother, who lives in Londrina, a call. You told her you were going abroad for work for a while. You didn't tell her where. Level 2. Arrival. The bus arrived on a Thursday in September. 3 in the morning. It crossed the border between Poland and Ukraine. On the Ukrainian side, a soldier was waiting for you with a clipboard. He spoke Portuguese with a heavy accent. You raised your hand. He gave a nod. That night, there were 12 people in your group in total. 4 Brazilians, 3 Colombians, 2 Americans, 1 Georgian. Nobody could fully understand what the others were saying. Communication relied entirely on basic English and hand gestures. That Ukrainian soldier didn't talk much. But every word he said did the job. Welcome, recruits. 2 weeks of training. Lviv is in western Ukraine. Far away from the front lines. It's a medieval stone city. Looking like it was lifted right off a postcard from Europe. You arrived with nothing but a backpack. No gear. And you didn't know a single word of Ukrainian. The barracks were in a military building. The air smelled like a mix of diesel fuel and cold leftovers. You slept on the top bunk. The guy in the bottom bunk was a snoring Colombian. Even his snores sounded like they had a Spanish lilt to them. The next day, training began. 2 weeks. It was completely different from what you had imagined. Level 3. Training. 2 weeks. Doesn't sound like enough time to learn how to survive on a battlefield. That's because the International Legion's training isn't trying to turn you into an elite soldier. They're just making you good enough. At least enough to make sure you don't have an accident on your first day. Or accidentally hurt your own team. You learned how to strip and reassemble the Ukrainian version of the AK-103 rifle blindfolded. You learned the operating procedures for hand grenades. Not how to throw with precision, but the steps to handle them safely. You learned combat first aid, how to apply a tourniquet, and how to use the Israeli bandage that every soldier carries in their vest to seal a chest wound. You learned how to use English, the operational language of the Legion, to communicate over the radio using standard protocols. You learned to distinguish between the sound of artillery firing and shells landing. That split-second judgment gives you about 3 seconds to hit the ground. The most important instructor was an American named Davis. He'd served as an infantryman in Afghanistan, and he spoke slowly and precisely. Every time someone asked a stupid question, he would repeat the same thing. The right question isn't, what would you do? It's, where will you be when it happens? Only later did you truly understand what that meant. On the battlefield, there's no time to think. You can only rely on the actions already drilled into your muscle memory. After the 2 weeks of training ended, you were assigned to a mechanized infantry unit. Your area of operations was toward Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine. At that moment, you were 400 kilometers from the front lines. But in 2 more days, it wouldn't be that far anymore. Level 4. The real pay. It was on the truck heading to Kharkiv that Rodrigo, the recruiter from that instant messaging app, who was a soldier himself, finally explained the truth about the pay. That 4,500 reais was the absolute cap. To actually get that much, you had to spend most of your time in active combat zones. In the trenches, in assault areas, or on field reconnaissance. Those staying in relatively safe cities, like Kyiv or Lviv, doing support work, only make $500 to $1,000. Those in the mid-range tier, either in the reserves or on rotation, can make $2,000 to $3,000. The most money always comes from the most dangerous places. Rodrigo stated bluntly that everyone knows this when they sign their contracts. It's just that no one mentions it in those videos on social media. You sit there quietly, looking out the truck window, as wheat fields flash by. Orange sunset. If you didn't know where you were headed, the scenery would actually be quite beautiful. You signed up for 6 months. And this is only day 1. Level 5. Kharkiv. Kharkiv is Ukraine's second largest city, only 40 kilometers from the Russian border. In the year 2022, the Russian army tried to take it, but they were pushed back. They tried once more, pushing forward from the fields to the north. By the time you arrive, the city itself is still relatively intact, but the northern suburbs are already in active contact line. Your unit is stationed in an abandoned school, located in a residential area 12 kilometers from the front. The windows are blocked off with sandbags, and the walls are still scarred with shrapnel marks from earlier shelling. There is only running water in the bathroom in the morning. You get to know the guys in your platoon, 12 of them. 3 are Brazilians. Henrique, 26 years old, from Porto Alegre, formerly a military firefighter, has already been here for 3 months. And Marcos, 34 years old, a guy from Belém, used to work in private security. This is his second contract. 2 Colombian veterans, a man of few words from England, goes by Tom. The rest are Ukrainians. They don't really talk to foreigners. On the very first night, Enrique spent 10 minutes explaining the daily rhythm to you. 12 hours on the front line, 12 hours off. When you're on the line, you aren't just hunkered down in the trench the whole time. There are patrols keeping watch, maintaining the fortifications, and the long, endless waiting. When you're off duty, you sleep, you eat, you clean your gear, and you try your best not to think too much. The problem isn't the firefights, Enrique said. The problem is the waiting. You're crouched in a ditch for 8 hours, waiting for something to happen. Most of the time, absolutely nothing happens. But you can't let your guard down, because the one time you finally do relax, that's exactly when trouble finds you. Level 6, the trench. That trench was nothing like what you see in those World War II movies. It was just a 5-foot deep ditch. The bottom was nothing but thick mud. Some parts were covered with wooden planks. The rest was completely exposed. You either stay crouched down, with your rifle aimed at the same angle you memorized on day 1. You can't really sit down properly. No toilets, just a pit about 20 meters away. You run over there as fast as you can, and run back even faster. The October chill in Kharkiv. It's not the same kind of cold as in southern Brazil. It's a damp, bone-chilling cold. And it never, ever lets up. It creeps right in through your vest and under your collar, and never come back out again. You got 3 layers on. Yet you're still freezing. Enrique says winter is going to be even tougher. You try your best not to think about winter. The sound that chills you to the bone isn't the shelling. It's that high-pitched buzzing. First-person view drones, just modified racing models, rigged with explosives in the front, controlled by an operator miles away, wearing VR goggles to pilot them. It comes screaming in at 150 kilometers per hour, making impossible, sharp turns, diving through windows, swooping straight into trenches. The buzzing sound is so sharp, and it's getting closer and closer. You've only got about 2 seconds. From the moment you hear that buzz until it hits you. In those 2 seconds, you dive to the bottom of the trench, and shield your head. On the 3rd day in the trenches, an FPV drone flew into the area just north of your position. You heard the buzzing, hit the ground, then heard the explosion 200 meters away. Silence. Then the radio crackled to life. A Ukrainian soldier was wounded. Not from your platoon. Your heart didn't stop racing for a full hour. But that's not even the hardest part. Level 7. Contact. It's your 2nd week in Kharkiv. The mission is to take a position somewhere inside a village that's already half ruined. The Russian forces are using it as an observation point. 4 houses, 200 meters of open ground. You need smoke cover and suppressive fire from the Ukrainian artillery before you can even move. And you aren't the only one with a rifle. But you were one of the few who pushed in from the right. Along with Enrique and a guy from Ukraine named Sasha. That sound. It was nothing like what you experienced in training, it was louder. Closer. It made even less sense. You couldn't see the enemy. You only saw dust, smoke, and shattered windows. So you just fired in the direction Enrique was shooting. Because that's what you were taught to do. At one point, inside the second house, you saw movement. You pulled the trigger. And after that 1 second, which felt so much longer, there was no more movement. Sasha moved in first. You followed right behind him. It was 2 Russian operators. By the time you arrived, one of them was already gone. The other followed within a minute. You stared at them for a long time. You didn't even know how long it had been. It's not the same in video games. Battlefield 3. You've been playing it since you were 14, it has animations. You can even respawn. In Squad, it's more realistic. It has weight. It has consequences. The gunfire sounds right, too, but there's no smell. There's no sight of a person just lying there like that. There's none of that silence afterward. A silence that's different from any other kind. While Sasha and Enrique checked the vests and pockets of those 2 men, which is standard procedure, they found what every soldier carries. Dog tags, rations, spare ammo. In the second man's coat pocket, there was a piece of paper, folded into fourths, crinkled from being opened and folded again and again. It was a crayon drawing. A house with a smoking chimney. 2 adults, and a much smaller child right in the middle. There's even a son in the corner. It was most likely drawn by his daughter. Sasha took one look at it, folded it back up, and tucked it into the pocket of the man who was no longer breathing. Enrique didn't say a word. They left that house behind. The mission went on, but from that day forward, something inside you changed. Even today, you can't quite put your finger on what it was. It wasn't regret, just a realization. The realization that the other side is human, too. A realization that on the other side, there was also a family waiting for a man who would never make it home again. Level 8, artillery fire. The Russian artillery followed a fixed pattern. They wouldn't just fire a single round. They fired in volleys. The first wave was for ranging. The third wave was for impact. You learned this the hard way at 2 in the morning on a Thursday in October. You learned it in reality. The first wave landed 300 meters from your position. The dull thud of the explosions. Dust and smoke. You didn't see it. You only heard it and felt the ground shaking. Before you could even process what was happening, Enrique was already shouting, "Move. Change positions." This was the contingency plan for rotating positions, so you wouldn't get hit by the second wave of corrected fire while staying put. You ran hunched over along the winding trench, covering about 40 meters in 20 seconds. The second wave landed 150 meters from where you had been. The ground shook even harder this time. You felt the shockwave in your eardrums. Clods of dirt came raining down. The third wave never came. Sometimes, the Russian forces just stop after 2 waves. Maybe they changed their target. Maybe their drone lost visual. Maybe Ukrainian artillery fired back. You'll never know the real reason. You can only sit in the dark and wait, with your heart in your throat, until the radio finally says, "All clear." That night, you typed a message to your mom, telling her you were doing fine, and that work was going well. But you didn't send it. You stared at the screen for 10 minutes. And then you deleted it. Level 9. You start to feel nothing at all. Around the 3rd week or so, when you hear the buzzing of a drone, you don't jump up anymore. It's not because you've become brave. It's just that your nervous system has recalibrated to know what a real emergency is, and what's just the everyday danger. You still hit the dirt. That reflex is burned into you. But before you deal with the threat, your heart doesn't race anymore. Between the moment you process it and the moment you react, you've cut out the panic. Henrique says, that's the difference between the ones who make it, and the ones who don't. It's not courage. You just turn into a machine that reacts the right way. People who panic freeze up. And people who freeze up are done for. Marcos, the guy from Belém, was on his 2nd contract. One night, while they were cleaning their rifles, he told you, after his first contract, he went back to Brazil, convinced he'd never go back. He stayed in Belém for 3 weeks. But he couldn't sleep. Even the slightest sound will wake him up. It feels like the ground beneath him isn't right. It feels like all those things people talk about don't actually exist at all. Layer 10. Loss. November. Ryan is gone. Ryan was American, 28 years old, from Texas. He served in the US Army for 4 years. He never really explained why he came to Ukraine. Maybe he couldn't adjust to civilian life, or maybe he just needed a sense of purpose. He was the kind of guy who could fix any piece of gear and explain how without ever showing off. It was a recon mission, 500 meters from the Russian lines. A drone hit him directly. He didn't even have those 2 seconds to react. In the Legion, the protocol after someone is gone is simple. Confirm, report, and carry on with the mission. The front line doesn't stop. The trenches don't close just to mourn. That night, you were sitting in that abandoned school, thinking about Ryan. You were only 20 meters away when it happened. It could have been you. You only have 3 months left on your contract. Layer 11. Choice. During the 5th month, Rodrigo came to talk to you about renewing. He was direct, 6 more months. On top of your regular pay. There's a $2,000 bonus. Ukraine needs guys with experience. Someone who's already spent 5 months on the front. Understands the dynamics of combat better than any rookie. You've become valuable. That bonus is just an acknowledgement of what you're worth. That night, you crunched the numbers. You've saved more money than you thought. There's almost nowhere to spend money in Ukraine. This money is enough to pay off your back rent. And set aside a nice emergency fund. Maybe I'll have enough for a down payment on a small apartment in Curitiba. But you've also lost 6 kilograms. You're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Ever since that shelling back in October, there's been this constant ringing in your left ear. And sometimes, right in the middle of a normal conversation, you suddenly can't hear a word the other person is saying. That's because you're subconsciously scanning every sound around you, looking for threats that aren't even there. You asked for 2 days to think it over. The first day, you didn't come up with anything useful at all. The second day, you called your mom. She picked up on the very first ring. Just like always, she said she was doing fine. She asked when you were coming home. You said, soon. She said she missed you. After you hung up, you stared at that pitch-black school building. Level 12. Who remains behind? You didn't renew your contract. You arrived back in Curitiba on a Sunday in January. The airport was the same as it ever was. The hot, humid summer air of Piranha hadn't changed. The traffic, the smell of coffee from the vending machines. People loudly complaining about the smallest, most trivial things. Everything was exactly where you left it. You were the one who had change. But it wasn't the kind of change people could see. You didn't come back with any obvious scars. No bandaged arms or anything like that. On the outside, you looked exactly the same as before. But on your first day home, you woke up at 3 in the morning. Because a car on the street slammed on the gas. Before your mind even knew what was happening, that sound had triggered something deep inside you. You sat there in the dark, on the edge of your bed. For 40 full minutes, waiting for a siren that was never going to sound. It took you 3 weeks before you could finally sleep through the night. Without waking up in a panic. It took me 2 whole months to stop, even in the safety of home. From subconsciously straining to listen for every little sound. You never know if you'll ever truly be able to stop doing that. The money finally hit your account. You paid the rent. You bought a new TV, not that you really needed one. But you wanted to, because you finally could. It was the 2nd week after coming back. You opened up a video streaming app. A new video popped up in your recommendations. Just another guy in a Brazilian military uniform. With snow in the background. Talking about that 4,500 real monthly salary. Talking about the basic training. Talking about the link in the description. You watched it for maybe 10 seconds. Then you just closed the app. Somewhere out there in Brazil, there's a young guy. Maybe he grew up playing Battlefield just like you did. Or maybe he's already been in the service. He's watching that same video right now. With a look of hope in his eyes. Seeing it as his chance to change his life. A chance to do what he thinks is the right thing. Or just a chance to answer some kind of calling. But that kid probably won't be as lucky as you were. And the last sound he ever hears will be that god-awful buzzing.